Alright, step one in any boondocking adventure, to make sure all your devices are charged while you're still in power before you head out to boondock. Okay, welcome to this week's episode of Luv Subbin.
As you can see, it's a very, very gusty day.
There's actually a gale warning out right now, and there are 13-foot seas. We're at Fort Fisher.
Yes.
Just outside of Wilmington, North Carolina. And this has been a place I've wanted to visit for a long time. It's an earthen fort.
Made for the Civil War.
That was part of protecting Wilmington and allowing the blockade runners to come in, because blockade running was an extremely important part of Wilmington and the Confederacy, and this is an earthen fort.
But they didn't have all the resources that the North had during the war, so that blockade runners would go and get the resources they needed to continue the war.
And it was very interesting because I do a lot of history reading, and prize money was a huge thing for the U.S. Navy, and they would get 50% of any of the value of the ship and the cargo, and which could be thousands upon thousands of dollars for these naval officers.
It was a big incentive for them to stop the blockade runners.
Yes, aside from just the patriotism. But yeah, we're here at Fort Fisher. It's a windy gale kind of day.
It is.
But yeah, this is something I've been looking forward to for quite some time. I've read a lot of books about Fort Fisher. In fact, one of the generals, Confederates, that was helping was Haygood, which I think is of Haygood fame from the Citadel, Johnson Haygood Stadium.
And what also is interesting, they had a lot of interesting technology stuff in the visitor center that we didn't even know existed back then.
Yeah, so we'll check some of that out. Check out Fort Fisher and continue our boondocking adventures in North Carolina. When you think about some of the emerging technologies that they had in the Civil War, this is actually an electric torpedo, which would be in the harbor, and they would actually have wires running to shore connected to a battery, an actual battery, and when ships would come by, they would close the circuit, the battery would heat some wires, there'd be a highly volatile fulminate of mercury, which would explode, setting off this charge and blowing up whatever vessel was nearby. So that's kind of a higher technology than I thought existed in the Civil War.
Well, they would anchor these so that there would be a bunch of them, and that would make it difficult for anybody to get close to the shore.
Yep. Cool.
So it's interesting, like the Castile, St. Marco, and St. Augustine, they would, when they captured a gun, would engrave on them the fact that they were captured.
Where it was captured and who captured it.
And these guns helped the Confederate Army hold this fort for a good long time before it was captured.
Right, this gun had a range of 5.5 miles, so it kind of pushed back the Union blockade further back.
And enabled the blockade to be run by all the importers that were trying to get past it.
Right, because Fort Fisher is all about the blockade running, what we're learning.
So this is the land side of the fort. It would protect the fort from being attacked by land, and the only weak spot of this whole design was the gate that was over there, and they called that the Bloody Gate because it survived so many attacks, but it did mount up the casualties.
Most of the units were from New York and Pennsylvania, from the Union side. There were two major assaults on Fort Fisher by the Union Army and Navy, one on December 24th, 1864, and the other on January 15th, 1865.
So in the final assault, the Union used 55 ships and 10,000 soldiers versus 1,900 soldiers which defended the fort.
The fall of Fort Fisher was a major blow to the supply lines of Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. All right, let's go boondocking. Of course, the other thing we'll do, aside from charging our devices, is to make sure that our freshwater tank is at 100% full. And you'll notice that we have two 6-gallon plastic jerry cans. These will remain empty because of weight issues, and we're going to a state park, so there should be water available. If we were going somewhere completely boondocking, these would be filled so that we could use them to fill our tanks when it runs low. But because it's a state park, the likelihood of us needing that is low, so they'll remain empty, and we'll refill if necessary. So we're here at our boondocking site, and when you're boondocking, there's a couple of things you want to do when you start off with. First of all, is I always check the battery voltage before using the electronic jack head, because that uses a lot of juice and it'll depress the voltage, and you'll want to wait a while for it to recover. So I just check to make sure that the battery is good right from the get-go, and you can see with that here, and everything's looking good. The next thing we do is, once we're all set up, the jack and the battery has had a chance to recover from the jack and everything is running, the next thing we do is we whip out our Victron again and we check to make sure that there's no stray current. And where could that stray current be coming from? It could be from, say, a light in your closet that's turned on, or a light in the storage compartment that's actually come on.
Or we had the inverter accidentally come on.
And when we were at Auburn University boondocking, our inverter had accidentally turned itself on. So, and that was using a bunch of amps. So that's the first thing. I know when the airstream is at just normal running mode, it's using about 0.63 amps. Right now it's at 0.69 amps, and you can see that. So I know that we're running at about what we should. So that's our first step towards boondocking goodness here. We're going to keep monitoring this as we go along. And
we're probably not going to get the solar panels out today because it's very cloudy, and we're going to have some weather coming in for tomorrow. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, excellent point. So this is a boondocking site, but you can see the trees here are really covering. We've got a gale warning, which brings up another point. When you have a gale warning, some type of heavy weather coming in, we don't want our solar panel blowing over and scratching it all, or perhaps cracking it. But we also want to look up, like Cindy just did, to make sure that there are no dead trees, dead branches.
Well, there's some pine cones up there.
Yeah, some pine cones, but I'm okay with that.
Better than acorns.
You know, something that could fall and let. So always be cognizant of the weather, because when we were in Hurricane Nicole, you could see this branch that came down on our site after we had moved. All right, you can see our site here, boondock. You know, oftentimes state park boondocking sites are a little tight because they're, you know, for the most part, a lot of people are in camper vans or Class C's
or tenting,
or small little R-pods and tenting, and that's certainly the case here. Because you can see how narrow it is both on this side,
but
as we come back,
we do have a lot of space.
Yeah, you can see how it's intended for you to pull your cars here and then pitch your tent and stuff here. So
preferably not under the tree branch.
Yeah, that's a weird looking tree, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cool how it just comes out like that. But yeah, there's no services to discuss here because obviously we're boondocking. But a good tip is, if you boondock, you should hopefully pick a site that's close to a water source, right? And you'll see that here, we're right close to it. So we're only here for 2 nights, so we'll be able to live on our tank. But if you're here for longer, we always like to make sure we've got water close by. It makes just carrying the jugs a heck of a lot easier.
So as you can see, we mentioned this site was a little narrow, and it was a little tricky back in, but not too bad. It's unlevel front to back, but better to be up than down.
Yep.
And it's a little level side to side. We had to use 2 blocks, so, you know, just a little unlevel. I think it's meant more for a smaller camper.
And where are we?
We are at Carolina Beach State Park.
And that's just south of Wilmington, North Carolina. So we are at site 34.
They do have some electric and water sites here, but they're few and far between.
They're very few, yes. We're about to start grilling our chicken and our pork. And, you know, I get a lot of flack from the grilling purists. I can't use the term barbecuing people because we're in North Carolina, and down south barbecue is a food. But
it's not a verb.
Right. I get a lot of heat from the purists about using charcoal briquettes. And I have tried and tried and tried to use the lump charcoal, and I just can't do it. I like the consistency of the size. I know exactly the heat. I know exactly how it's going to work, how I can place to get cold regions, hot regions. And with the Dutch oven, and that's why I use the briquettes, because it doubles with the Dutch oven, I can form a number of briquettes and get the right temperature. So I'm sorry, no matter how hard I try, I cannot get away from charcoal briquettes.
Yep, but it still makes the food taste really good.
It's still, to me, it's 10 times better than anything a gas grill can do.
I agree.
Okay, so recently we had to buy some cooking spray for my grill set, and we bought some Food Lion brand. And when we did, that made me think of the times when I worked in manufacturing, and we made private label stuff for grocery stores and places like that. And one of the things that I always used to do with that product was be able to look at the different areas of the product to see who made it. Was it Rayovac? Was it Duracell? Was it Energizer? Well, looking at this cooking spray, I compared it to Pam. And you can easily tell that the cans are very similar. The beading of the bottom is the same. The injection molding point for the cap is the same. The style is the same. But here's the kicker. When you look at the injection molded sprayer, they're absolutely identical. So this Food Lion product, I'm almost 99% plus sure it's made by Pam. And you might say, okay, well, they're just putting the cheap stuff in here and the expensive ingredients in here. Well, that's not my experience. My experience says it's a lot easier to throw in some yellow caps versus red caps and a couple of different cans. It's really hard to put all that new material in through the tanks and the pipes and all that other stuff. I bet you 10 to 1, this is the same as this, just this is a less cost. All right, well, there you have it. We have completed our dinner for tonight, which is using the Carolina mustard pepper sauce.
The one that I made is pretty close to the one that we tasted. I just need to tweak it a little bit, and I think I might be able to mimic it.
Yeah, I think it was pretty darn close.
I'm excited about it. It's a very good sauce, and I think it also tenderizes the meat as it soaks in it.
We're going to see.
Yep.
Because we're boondocking here. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to be quick about this because we're burning some lights, and Ant-Man does not like burning lights.
No.
Even for a closing.
No.
So if you like this video,
give us a big thumbs up.
And if you think of earning a subscription, click subscribe.
And comment below if you visit any really interesting barbecue joint and would like to share. Because I think the whole culture about barbecue is fascinating.
Because we come out with RV and airstream related videos just like this one every Tuesday. Cut the lights.
Thanks for watching.